Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me on another episode of Titans of Healthcare. I'm your host, Jared Taylor. We have a very special episode here today, and one that kind of came together just based on running into some people at the health conference in Vegas a few weeks back. So shout out to Hejl for having so many of us in the same place so that these conversations can continue after the conference. I'm going to let everyone kind of go through and give their backgrounds and what their company does. So we'll start off with you, Luke, and then we'll go down the list to Josh and Lori.
Yeah, first of all, Jared, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be in the same space today with Josh and Lori as well, and kind of talk about some of the passion that we all share. So my name's Luke Hejl. I am co-founder and CEO of TimelyMD. And at TimelyMD, our mission is to improve the health and well-being of students. And we do that by providing virtual medical and mental health care to students anytime, anywhere, 24/7. We founded the company in 2017. We actually started as a medical-only solution for students, focused in higher education, and quickly identified, of course, that there was even a greater need on the mental health side, and so worked to build out our mental health team as well in 2018. And at this point, we're serving about 1.5 million students in the United States at about 250 schools. So at every one of those schools, all students on campus have access to no-cost visits to medical providers, mental health providers, just based on the needs of that institution. And really interestingly, at this point, 80% of all of our visits are mental health related. Now, prior to the pandemic, that number was 10%. So we've seen a pretty significant shift over the past few years as well. A metric that we also published recently that I'm excited to share is 75% of all the students that our mental health providers work with actually see improvements in their mental health. So, we're getting to the point where we're really looking at and measuring the impact that we're having on students as well. And we all know, again, we've got real passion around our mission that students in crisis, they don't have weeks or even minutes to wait. And so the work that we're doing, I think, is critically important. And so we're working every day to ensure that students have access to on-demand emotional support that can reach us in less than 5 minutes. So anyways, that's an overview of who we are. But again, really glad to be here. Thanks for adding me, Jared.
Thanks, Luke. Josh, would love to hear more, obviously, about you and Hazel Health.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. So I'm Josh Golomb. I'm CEO of Hazel Health, and a lot of similarities to Luke's story, but we focus completely on K-12. So our mission at Hazel is to make sure that all students have access to quality healthcare, and what that means for us in a K-12 setting is that students can come into the health office, whether it's for a physical health issue like a headache, a cold, pink eye, all the things kids get, or alternatively for mental health issues around anxiety or depression, and they get connected virtually to one of our providers on the other end. And so we're now across 14 states. We are working with, I think, just north of 3,000 schools to represent about 3 million kids, again, all in the K-12 space.
Thanks, Josh. And now, last but not least, Lori.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jared, for having me. Luke and Josh, it's so nice to meet you. I look forward to hopefully connecting over the long term. Wanted to congratulate you both on all the success that you've had. Caraway's much younger. We've just started this year. We were founded in 2022. So I'm looking up to both of you, just given all the great work you've done. So congratulations on that. And Luke, I saw that you guys were got a big award from Inc. I guess a couple days ago. So that's just fantastic. So congrats to you guys. Caraway I'm the CEO and co-founder of Caraway. We are a digital health company. We're tailored to Gen Z women and all individuals assigned female at birth. We provide mental, physical, and reproductive healthcare services all in one place. And we're also teaching health as a life skill, so our members can gain agency and independence in their healthcare journey.
Thank you, Lori. So one of the first things we want to dive in today, we'll start with you, Luke, and then we'll kind of go Luke, Josh, Lori, and then we'll kick it back the other way for some other conversations. Let's talk through mental health's role in education today, Luke. Would love to hear your thoughts, and everyone kind of piggyback on the other or add some new thoughts to the mix as well.
Well, I love what Lori just said, actually, as teaching mental health as a life skill. I mean, I totally agree. That's a great part of mental health's role in education. And 9 out of 10 students say that their campus is experiencing a full-blown mental health crisis. So when you think about, why students are actually on that campus to learn and prepare themselves for the rest of their life, it's critically important that these concerns that the students have are addressed, right? And the number one reason why students unenroll from college is because of mental health as well. And so because of this, it's really the top concern, if not, it's one of the top concerns of pretty much any college president, and that's reported year over year in a study I believe that the ACE does. So for those reasons, I think it's critically important that we have a strong focus on mental health in education, and are looking to everyone involved in education has got to look to how they can continue to support students in a way to get them the resources that they need. And so again, that's why we exist, is to provide that on-demand access to students. And we're, again, we have found, and of course studies show as well, that providing equitable access, meaning all students have access to that care, and lowering any barriers to care is critically important as well to help that student stay in school, which leads to helping them achieve the goals that they have as well. So I think education has a huge role in working to provide resources and help solve the mental health crisis that we're in.
Thanks, Luke. Would love to hear your additional thoughts onto that, Josh.
Yeah, this is so fun hearing other folks who have been spending time in the education space. So let me give you like the K-12 view, and I'll go macro and then micro. But so one of the things that was really interesting as we started doing this work is one of the big things that K-12 schools focus on is this metric called chronic absenteeism. And what it is it's a measure of how much kids are missing school. And typically it's defined of kids missing more than 10% of the school year. And there's all this data. If you think about things you care about for K-12, kind of what kids' outcomes, it's so highly correlated. So one of the best predictors of your reading level for students in 3rd grade is whether or not they're chronically absent in kindergarten. By the time you're in 6th grade, one of the biggest indicators of whether or not you will graduate from high school is your rate of chronic absenteeism. And when you pull apart the data, one of the biggest reasons why kids miss a lot of school is health. And now more and more is mental health as a big driver of, do kids want to go to school? How are they feeling about things? And so at this macro level, there's this huge need to make sure that we're doing everything we can for kids to feel successful at school, be at school. And it also correlates to things like incarceration rates, long-term results after post-graduation. And so schools right now are hyper focused on this. And if it used to be, when we started Hazel years ago, if you looked at any kind of survey of superintendents, it would usually, the things were top of the list for priorities were things around curriculum, better instruction, and now mental health. They'll also sometimes refer to as social emotional learning is almost number one in almost any view of superintendents, because they know how much it matters there. But then at an individual kid level, and as a parent level, this is playing out so much in the classroom right now. And it's playing out in kids, their ability to learn, their ability to engage, how they show up in the classroom. And it's playing out actually a lot in teacher mental health as well, too. Because if you imagine now as a teacher, and my wife's a teacher, you're navigating a classroom of all these kids right in the midst of a mental health crisis, and your ability to support all of them to learn as a group, but individually, there's probably not a bigger thing that's top of mind for the educators we talk to. And so this is why things like Timely and Caraway matter so much, because we need to bring more services to those families.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate that. And Lori, love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I would love to add. I like to call myself a student of higher ed these days. I'm a healthcare person through and through, a whole career. And I think one of our members really said it best about mental health's role in education. And we just started seeing members in September. And she said the following: good health and good mental health is what allows us to get curious about what's happening in our world. It allows us to act on our passions and focus on what makes us excited to be alive. So I think that sums up the importance. And we all know that supporting students in and out of the classroom has long been a part of education. And along those lines, student supports have evolved along with the changing needs. And boy, do we have a massive need, as Luke and Josh were just saying.
And Lori, I'm so grateful that we have this group of companies on the show today, because I wanted to start with you, Lori, on the barriers to innovating in this space. And I think because of when you started, we're going to get some similar but different perspectives here, because obviously maybe the barriers for Luke and Josh at where they're at today are a little different but they probably faced the same things that you faced in the early days.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm actually was going to start with I think the biggest barriers for our members is the current reproductive health circumstances. It's a big part of our care model. There's been a lot of government interference in women's rights to healthcare, and the mental and physical healthcare challenges many women face in college have further worsened with the overturning of Roe. Their bodily autonomy and health is no longer their decision and their choice, and access is very restricted to reproductive health care services. And even before the Dobbs decision, unintended pregnancy was one of the number one reasons that women dropped out of college. So again, this restricted access is exacerbating the mental health challenges. And there's this incredible podcast. It's called The Quadcast, and Luke, you may have seen it especially. It was a professor at the University of Tennessee really explaining the implications of what's happening at the University of Tennessee. And they had a reproductive health center that was open for 47 years that closed. And just overnight, there's no resources. And the school itself it's sort of crickets. It's a big elephant in the room. There's not education, there's not information. And so I think it's created a big barrier.
Thanks, Lori. Josh, we'll kick it over to you for any barriers that you have as well.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with maybe like there's been the barrier that we thought has not been as much as we expected, and where they have played out. And I think when we started like Luke's team did with physical health, and we moved into the mental health space, and I know there was a lot of discussion around the stigma around mental health access, both for kids and for families. And while that is absolutely true in part, we have found in general families, kids have really embraced the idea of getting more support and services. And some of it's because just for parents, how much in crisis families are. There was a Kennedy Foundation report that came out recently that said about 53% of parents have had to miss work in the last 60 days because of a mental health concern for their child. But most parents don't actually feel comfortable talking to their employer about that because there's still a lot of shame and stigma around it. But we've actually found when you make the mental health services available to essentially most of how our model works is we often get a referral from a school counselor or a teacher at a school, and then parents can opt in. And we found an incredibly high opt-in rate across all demographics because parents are seeing the need, and there's it's the wait lists are months in many cases for these families. The thing that's probably the most challenging part for us in playing in the education space is we're operating between two worlds. And so if you think about education, K-12, it's universal access for everyone, right? And this is part of the wonderful things of these schools. They don't care what your insurance is, your income level, your immigration status. We're trying to support everyone with this common good. On the other end, we have all the healthcare system and all of our health plans that these kids are members of, that often have their own unique individual approach to how they want to solve good things. We're all trying to work, but it also creates a lot of fragmentation in the system. And so part of our role is like, how do we bring these two systems together so that there can be like a universal thing that works for all kids and doesn't feel so fragmented, which can be hard, right? Because in a given school we work with, we're helping all kids, but they may represent 20 different health plans. And so how do we make something cohesive that makes sense to families and the kids that use the services?
Thanks, Josh. And Luke, we'll kick it over to you now for your thoughts on these barriers.
Yeah, when I think about barriers, innovating, and especially in the space that we're in of serving college students, one of the earlier barriers that we had was quickly building relationships and helping the counseling directors on campus understand how we're going to work together with them, right? Now we've overcome that barrier, I would say, at this point. In fact, we have a lot of counseling directors now reaching out to us directly saying, how can I work with my campus to establish a partnership with you guys? So that was one of our earlier barriers, I would say, that's actually turned into something that's it's a beautiful thing for us. But when I think about the question, we were first to market and doing what we're doing in college campuses, delivering care to student bodies. And I honestly don't feel like there are a lot of barriers to innovation, and in fact, I feel like there's a ton of opportunity to continue to innovate aggressively in the space that we're in. And so that's what we're doing. We are aggressively innovating and working with the campuses to understand, what are the growing needs on campus? How can we continue to innovate through the way that we're delivering the care, the way that we build technology, to solve those problems. And again, the partners that we're working with, the higher education institutions, that we're working with they're fantastic, right? And they bring us even ideas. Sometimes we're working with Johns Hopkins right now on something that is a critical need that they have that we're working to solve for them and their student population, right? That is, of course, applicable to all the campuses that we serve. And we've seen that over and over again in the way that we've innovated by the products and services and technology that we've launched. So I think there's huge opportunity to continue to innovate is really my answer.
Well, Josh, let's continue on what Luke was just chatting about too. So let's and then we'll kick it over to Lori as well. So let's talk more about these areas of opportunity and growth in the space.
Yeah, I'm with Luke. I think there's so much opportunity, and I think one of the things that's great when we started, there were so few digital health companies focusing on pediatrics and kids, or just kids and youth in general. So we address a broad range here on this podcast, and there's been so many great companies that have popped up in the last couple of years, and I think it's partly because of a recognition of how important their need is, and how I for many years before Hazel, the two companies I ran were all focused more on adults and seniors, often with chronic disease. And I will say, I don't think it was until I had my own kids where I realized I'd been spending most of my career focusing on adults and seniors who may have not had a great experience with the healthcare system for years. And then I had my three boys. My oldest son, we actually found out was born deaf. So we found out about a year and a half in. And it wasn't until going through the healthcare system as a parent and seeing the irony of, gosh, we're like how hard it is for parent and for kids to get access to care at times, and how we're, if we just made things a better opportunity, better care, easier to navigate the system, not only could we keep kids, at age 12 or 18 or 20 healthier, but could we change the experience they have with the healthcare system for the next 50, 80, 100 years? And so I think that's fantastic. And what's interesting is going through schools is you realize like this is whether it's higher ed or K-12, like this is where, to state the obvious, where kids are. And if you think about what happened in healthcare on the direct to employer space for a while, there's this recognition, if you wanted to reach adults, why not go to where they work? Why not go to the places that they are the most? That's the same reality that exists for kids today. And so I think there's both the opportunity to bring more services. There's also a big opportunity for early intervention. And one of the data points, it's early for us that we've seen on mental health, is the average age in the K-12 space of diagnosis for mental health in the country right now is about 14. And what we're seeing, the average age of referral coming into Hazel right now in K-12 is about 12 and a half. And what we believe that is because there's a big difference between usually that age 14 is me as a parent. When am I seeing enough of issues at home that I now try to find services for my child? But my teacher, my school counselor, those of my kids, they often see things actually a lot earlier. And so if we can imagine bringing more services to those kids, is there a way that we can tackle a lot of these issues far earlier before a lot of the other issues play out, before even issues of behavior and suspensions play out, if we could tackle it at a much earlier age?
Kick it over to Lori.
Yeah, no, I love both of your comments. They're excellent, and I couldn't agree more. There's a massive opportunity, and the opportunity we see at Caraway is to fundamentally change the way college women experience the healthcare system, right? We know there's lots of barriers. Many don't know where to turn when they have a problem. They have trouble getting appointments for routine needs or more complex needs. There's countless hours spent waiting for appointments at urgent care or student health. And there's just deep frustration and risk because they can't get the care they need. And what we're seeing with our members is that members want a different healthcare experience. They want one that doesn't separate the head from the body. And they want one that they can access with the same ease and convenience and timeliness like they're able to do with most other things in their life. And so I think that we have this incredible opportunity in addressing those experiences is just uncover early diagnoses and set the course for lifelong healthcare habits and overall well-being. So just really underscoring the proactive opportunity we have. And, I was thinking about the topic today. I know we're focused on education, but I don't want to let the healthcare system off the hook, right? There's a massive role that the healthcare system has to play. And I think the opportunity for higher ed, in our case, is around proactive care. I mean, the health system doesn't pay for those that we know need care, but don't reach a certain threshold, right? Maybe it's a certain metric where they don't have an official diagnosis and therefore aren't eligible for something to be billed, right? And for a clinician to be paid for. And so I think in education in particular, we can work with those sort of sub-threshold members that really need care and education and skills development. And I think that's one of the biggest opportunities.
And Lori, we're going to kick it back to you again, because I want to dive a little bit more into how whole person care affects behavioral health care.
This is one of our favorite topics at Caraway. We're really passionate about integrated behavioral health care, so delivering medical care and mental health care together. Our focus on women's health, really building for women's health, is due to the greater incidence of physical and mental health concerns and needs presenting at this age window, which are best addressed in a collaborative care model. And that model is a noun in our world. And our chief health officer has spent her life training and standing up the collaborative care model in various settings. She trained at the Ames Center at the University of Washington. There's probably been more clinical trials on the collaborative care model than most that prove outcomes are better. We know outcomes are better in the shorter term and the longer term when we deliver collaborative care. And so to us, mental health equals medical health and vice versa. And we know integrated care leads to better health outcomes and team-based care leads to better outcomes. And so just another minute on the model itself, which is a primary care physician, and for Caraway, that's an adolescent medicine physician or nurse practitioner, or a family medicine trained, or a gynecologist. That's a core part of the care team with a therapist and with a health advisor that's supported by a consulting psychiatrist. And so we think that model is crucial to delivering the best outcomes, but also in thinking about how we scale as a community and deliver mental health care to as many people as we can with that model. So in essence, Cheryl, who's serving as our first consulting psychiatrist, is really training the care team on how important integrated behavioral health is, or collaborative care, pick your term. They're synonymous for us. And so we think that's going to be a crucial way to scale and reach as many members as we can with a model that we know is incredibly effective. And, for a variety of reasons, which maybe we could all talk about together sometime, is why our healthcare system is very challenged to deliver that and pay for that kind of model when we know it produces the best outcomes for our age window, our 18 to 27-year-old age window.
Thanks, Lori. We're gonna go a little out of order now, so that Josh will kick you off with the next topic. But Luke, would love to hear your thoughts. Then we'll kick it over to Josh, and then we'll start up a new conversation point that I'm really curious of diving more into.
Yeah, well, first, amen to everything Lori said for sure. Whole person care hinges on the complete integration of medical and behavioral care. It's certainly a passion point for TimelyMD and specifically one for me as well. It's something that we prioritize on a regular basis. In fact, on Monday I went to Cooper Clinic, which is it's like an eight plus hour physical that I did, right? And had to search for and opt in to a mental health component of this exam, right? And so every clinician that would listen on Monday, I told them, about my passion on this topic, on why that should be included for every person who has a physical through them. So anyways, certainly a passion point of mine personally as well. We know that many health issues, like fatigue, headache, stomach pains, muscle soreness, things like that, they may actually be physical manifestations of stress or anxiety, or other mental health issues that exist. So totally agree with what Lori said about team-based care. It's all about working together, making sure that you are part of a system that works together. And so, we do that with the clinicians on our end at TimelyMD, but also the providers that work on campuses as well, and making sure that we work with them, to take great care of the students. And what we're seeing is really positive impacts there. Many times, again, if you're able to address something on the physical health side, it has a significant impact on the mental health side. So helping the world understand that, and continuing to drive passion and create businesses like we have, and encourage the healthcare system to operate in this way is critically important.
Yeah, and I'll jump in. I mean, Lori and Luke, you guys, they said it incredibly well. So we used to get started on the medical, physical health side and emerged over. And it was interesting working with kids. Earlier, I mentioned these kids were chronically absent. And part of why we started to invest more in mental health is we would see so many kids who were coming in. They were missing a lot of school, that had perpetual headaches, perpetual stomach aches. And they weren't faking. It wasn't just because they were trying to get out of math class, but they were and as adults, we pretend like there's a big difference, and we know when something's physical health versus mental health. And I think we delude ourselves. But I think for a lot of these kids that were coming in, is like it was these GI. It was not a GI cause. Like there was no underlying medical cause, but they were playing out as physical health symptoms for these kids, and it was leading them to miss a lot of school, not feel well. And that's a lot of what drove us to get into this. Of if we want to actually support kids, their overall well-being, you need to be able to support both sides. And so sometimes that is the physical health providers, whether it's us or PCPs, being able to have the expertise to bring that in, but it also actually plays that on the other side. And there may be a child who has anxiety that also has really bad eczema that plays out when they're feeling anxious in class, and it makes it hard for them to focus and concentrate. And the ability to also have that mental health provider have access to, you want your kids to feel well, and you want to know that whatever exact need it is, there's a way to access that, versus having to always necessarily figure out which side of the system, of the healthcare system, do I need to go to for this thing my kid needs. You want to be able to feel like the healthcare system is supporting anything your child might need.
Thanks so much, Josh and Luke and Lori. Appreciate your thoughts on that. I want to talk about something that, I came from. Originally, I was in the staffing world in healthcare. And originally when I started my past company, we were a staffing marketplace for nurse anesthetists, anesthesiologists, and some other types of healthcare professionals. But I really started it because I was looking at the staffing shortages that we were going to face based on an aging population, and just the fact that we had a shortage of healthcare professionals, right? So I really was focusing in on the access to care piece. With that being said, right, how does greater access to care and education affect these underserved populations? We'll start with Josh, and then we'll go Lori, Luke, if that works.
Yeah, yeah, and Jared, and I'm glad you're passionate about this because it's a big deal for us too. And so, like, just some data first. So I think, within the K-12 space, I think the data generally shows that probably about 20%, about 1 in 5 kids need access to mental health services, and as the latest data, only about 4% of those, so about 1 in 5 need that. So access is a huge issue, but it disproportionately affects kids in communities of color. And so if you actually break the Kaiser Foundation, Family Foundation broke down that 4%, it's actually closer to like 5.5% for students that are white, in the high 2% for students of color. And so everyone needs to get better, but it's disproportionately those communities are suffering from lack of access. And schools are this great equalizer, right? Everyone has transportation. There's adults that folks trust. There's multilingual support. And so for us, it's a great mechanism to start to try to address that. And so we actually had a study before we were doing mental health services, actually before COVID. The U.S. Department of Ed did a study with one of our school districts here in California, just to look at how many family, like by race, a bunch of different data points, but including by race, how are families using telehealth? And what we actually found in this district is that the highest, everyone was using it at a time when telehealth was only about 4% utilization in the country. We were seeing data points of 20 to 30%. And the highest utilizers in the district that they looked at were our Black and African American families. And so it was like great. We sort of knew this anecdotally, but it was great to see that you could actually close a lot of these access gaps if you really go to a place where everyone is and you make it easy to access, that you can actually raise the bar for everyone, but actually try to address equity for those groups that don't, in the typical digital health ecosystem, don't have those same access points. So a very big, and for us, the other part, it also means you have to have really culturally competent care. So it's not just having access. And so one of the things we're really proud of is more than half of our providers identify as people of color. More than 30% speak a second language fluently, because the wonderful thing on technology is you can imagine now at a given school that's got a very diverse set of kids that you can now match not only on what their need might be, but on kids that look like them, on kids that, on caregivers that look like them, on the caregiver that reaches out to the case manager, the parents in the evening can speak to them in their native language, is such an important thing to solve if we really want to address healthcare access and healthcare equity in this country.
Lori, would love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I love those thoughts, Josh. I think the great equalizer is a really incredible sum up. And, for us, Gen Z is the most diverse generation in U.S. history, right? Constituting nearly a quarter of the population, the most socially minded, we think the most flexible in terms of their options for healthcare, which is why there's so much exciting opportunity for all of us. And I think that we were built for women and those assigned female at birth, given the historical underrepresentation and undertreatment of women and the need for services. There was an unbelievable statistic in the Commonwealth Fund report last year that noted that 80% of women don't even enter the healthcare system until they're ready to have children, which they are having children, which is just an astonishing. So we have this massive underrepresentation, and we feel that, with women as the focal point of our care design, we believe outcomes will be better for everybody. Right? We embrace all gender identities as expression. We've cared for some men already. And, the data on more underserved populations is clear. I mean, we all know it, right? The data on the LGBTQIA population, which is a big focus of ours. One of our angel investors, Hope Lab, invested in us for that purpose, to bring Caraway, help enable Caraway to be the great equalizer for that population. And there's the decline in engagement and enrollment is very notable in the population. I think it's more than 1 in 4 LGBTQIA college students consider dropping out of school because of their mental health challenges. Luke, you probably know a lot about that. I know you're doing awesome work there. And the data on Black and Brown students related to unplanned pregnancies, and nearly 3/4 of the historically Black colleges and universities are in states that have banned or mostly banned abortion services. And we know that that's a massive, the number one reason why women leave school. Again, as I said before, pre-job. So, this great equalizer strategy is just really powerful. And, health equity is crucial for all of us. We're very committed to delivering care with cultural humility, right? Where our clinicians have that cultural humility when they deliver care, our content, our resources, making sure they're culturally competent, that the diversity in so many ways of our care team, and our desire to really make sure that we're targeting historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, regions where there's a lot more underserved population of our Gen Z target, our 18 to 27 target. And of course, our desire in restricted states on the reproductive health side to educate and offer contraception options, counseling, prescribing, education as much as possible to empower young women in the decisions that they can make around their health care. And then also, it's hard not to mention the financial piece of this as well. And that's also, I think, why education in healthcare and mental health, again, is this amazing equalizer, because there are very significant financial challenges as we think about the healthcare system combined with the education system. And we're all spending so much money on healthcare, but no one's getting what they need. Or it's really hard to get people what they need, which is, something we're all tackling. And I know that Luke and Josh are really have a lot of progress there.
Yeah, well, I gotta say again, this is fun to talk to with people who wake up every day with the same passion and similar missions. I mean, you guys said it well. Equitable access to care is, it's everything as we think about the future of our nation, right? And as Lori just stated, sometimes the only health and well-being care students have these days, for the population we're serving is provided through their schools. And so the way that we've built our business model, and we're partnering directly with the school to provide no cost care to the student. There's no copay, there's no insurance. It's just very simple. So being thoughtful about serving those populations well is critical. We found, we serve all different types of institutions, from small to large private schools, community colleges, a good number of HBCUs, four-year publics. The first time we launched on a community college, we found one of our product names actually was called, instead of Talk Now, it was Therapy Now. And we found that word therapy did not resonate well with a diverse population on a community college. And so we quickly, identified that and worked to identify, how to turn it into something different. And so, those are some of the things that we're finding along the way, because that was actually a barrier to care for that population. So you've got to have your ear to the ground and listen to, the actual patients that you're serving, the institutions, and what they're saying as well. So, our passion, for continuing to provide that on-demand and really equitable access, it's important that we embrace, the identities and experiences of the students. And, we, similar to what Lori was saying, think that outcomes are no, really. There's plenty of studies that have been done that show that outcomes are really dependent on the relationship with the provider. And so, we have worked and will continually work to have a very diverse provider network. And so our culturally responsive team is, the provider network it reflects diversity in things like, race, ethnicity, gender, identity, age, religion, worldview. All of those things are critically important, to make sure that we're serving any and every student well, and that they can find a provider that looks like and thinks like and like them, right? And that's going to lead to a better outcome. 50% of our providers are they identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color, right? And that, again, is critically important to the, to students, that they are able to find someone that looks and feels like them. So again, as Lori stated too, many times this might be the first time that a student's navigating healthcare on their own, their mental health care and their physical health care on their own. So breaking down any barriers that we can to help them navigate that care better is something that is, again, really important, particularly for underserved populations.
My last question for all of our guests here today, and I want to see, we'll kind of do this one, I guess, is like a lightning round, but add as much as you can into the answers. I'm not going to buzz anyone. This is around, what does the future of mental health and education look like, right? Let's look ahead. In an ideal world, what does that look like? We'll start with you, Josh, and then we'll go to Luke, and then we'll wrap up with you, Lori.
Yeah, I think we're going to see in schools, in the K-12 space, they talk about, it's called multi-tiered systems of support across, not just, they have 3 tiers, and not just the kids that need services, but even kids that need basic preventative kind of coaching, education support. And I think we're going to see more and more investment in the classroom of how to give kids the basic language of social emotional learning, whether or not you might imagine, instead of having, the way you have your annual well child visit, an annual sort of mental health screening and checkup, where it becomes much more of the lexicon and much more of something that is not, we're talking about mental health, and not just when kids are in health distress. I expect more and more of that to happen in education in the coming years.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all can agree that mental health support is just increasingly relevant and critical for all ages. If we don't, work harder to support students, the dominoes will start to fall. When you think about education, society in general, the economic impact of, not working to continually solve this problem could be pretty big for our nation. And so, that's part of what drives me and my team. And I know, Lori and Josh and their teams as well, every day. I mean, there's no signs at this point that the mental health crisis that we are in is slowing down, especially on the other side of the COVID-19 pandemic. I shared that shift from 10% of our visits were mental health related to 80. I mean, wow, that's a big shift, right? We've got hospitals and that are overwhelmed and short-staffed these days. And we got provider burnout as well. So there's just a number of things as a result of this. And so, we've got to be laser-like focused on this. And that's what we do at TimelyMD is focusing on this, solving this problem. And, we won't stop until equitable on-demand access to mental health care is in the hands of every student. I mean, I think there's some other things that are interesting and going on right now as well, and opportunities. We launched our peer community just months ago as well, and so there's some great results there. And the reason we did that was, many conversations within higher education for years. You'd always hear on campus, either talking to students or administrators, well, where do students go first, right? Well, they go to their peers. And so finding a way and innovating a way for students to do that and interact with others to help solve their problems together. I'm just giving an example of how it's critically important that we've got to continue to innovate and think about ways to put the right tools in the hands of students, to solve this problem, because we're not all created equal. The way that we, will take that first step is different per person. And so making sure that there's different doors to walk through, whether that's physical or virtual, or, talking to a live provider, or, a digital self-care journey, which is something else that we're working on and spending a lot of time as well, peer communities, things like that. All of these things will work together, to solve mental health. And the outcome, I think, is we're all going to have a better world to live in together.
Lori.
Yeah, I think you both summed it up nicely. I will just underscore that I hope the future includes that we're all living in a world where mental health is a high priority and integrated into every area of education. I hope the future is preventive mental health treatment becomes the norm, not the exception, and reduces the rates of adolescent mental health episodes involving lifelong disorders, and that no one has to feel like suicide's the only way to relieve their emotional pain and suffering.
Well, thank you all again so much for joining me on Titans of Healthcare. I can't wait to have you all back on again, dive into some different topics, get you on some different panels, but really appreciate it, and can't wait for future conversations, and can you continue seeing how each of your companies continues to grow and help students.
Thank you,
Thanks, Jared.
Thank you so much.